what did I do by that? Well, let's check it out. What's important to end this middleware is await next, like this. So now let's go inside of our features server, features out server route.ts. And for example, let's find our logout route, this post logout route, and let's add the session middleware here. Make sure you add a comma after the session middleware. Once you've added the session middleware, what will happen is that if an unauthorized user tries to log out, they will be stopped right here because we cannot find a cookie for the user that's trying to log out, meaning that they shouldn't even attempt to do this, and we're going to throw back a 401. Otherwise, if they pass this, we're going to append all of these SDKs and their session and pass them to the context, which means that, for example, if I want to log out, I also need to clear my account session. So how can I get my current account? Well, since we used c.setAccount, we can now access it right here. So const account will be c.getAccount, like this. But as you can see, there is an issue. This is not type safe. This context right here has no idea what the account is. And since we were already that careful with type safety using the RPC, using React query, using Zod validator and all of those things, let's continue with that type safety. And thankfully, Hono allows us to do that as well. So go back inside of your session middleware here. And what we have to do now is create the type which this middleware will return. So type additional context, or whatever you want to call it. I think this is an appropriate name. And you have to have a variables here. And then inside of here, you have account to be account type. Then you have databases to be databases type. After that, storage type. Users type. And user is going to be models dot preferences. And let me just see. Okay, we imported models right here. I wasn't sure if we have the models. So yes, this is obviously different from the ones above because these are SDKs, but user is a result from this method. This is a fetch request, right? So that's why we have a very specific type for that. Models user with models preferences. How do I know this is the type? These are fairly obvious, right? Well, I know because I hovered over here and saw that. So I just appended it to be here. And then we are simply going to use the additional context. Again, make sure you have variables here. Don't misspell it and use the capital V here. And now use the additional context and simply add it in here. Let's see if there are any errors. It looks like there are some errors here. So let's see, did I do something wrong? Databases type databases as databases type. Not exactly sure what is incorrect here. Databases, maybe I misspelled it. Yes, databases. I have a typo inside of my additional context. Now there are no errors here. And if I go back to my route, guess what? My account is now type safe, no more errors. So we successfully inferred from this middleware exactly what is extended in this context right here. So you just learned how to create a custom middleware for AppWrite. So even if there was no third-party library, we created our own. Why am I emphasizing on that? Well, if you go to Hono, if you go inside of their middlewares here, you can see they have a bunch of built-in middlewares, but they also have third-party middlewares for Nextout, for Clerk, for Firebase, right? For all of these things which, you might want to use, but they don't have one for AppWrite. And the reason I want to tell you this is, you don't have to be afraid of building your own middlewares. You are not stuck if there is a third-party middleware or library that's missing. You can always create your own, and that's what we just did, right? If there was an app-write middleware listed here, I would definitely use it. It's probably made from the app-write authors themselves, and it's probably the best practice, right? But no biggie, we can create our own, and now we're gonna see whether it works or not. So we just obtained the session middleware here. We have the account, and what we have to do for a proper logout is, after we delete the cookie, await account delete session and delete the current session. And since we use await, this needs to be asynchronous. There we go. We can't test this out yet because we don't have any screen for the currently logged in user. And if we want to have a screen for the currently logged in user, we also need to have a route which will fetch the currently logged in user. So in the top of this server route, I'm going to add a get current, and we're going to use the session middleware. So I get the currently logged in user. I'm going to add, well, just a context here. And session middleware, what exactly happens to be the error here? I think it's because I'm missing a return here. So let's just get the user using c.get user, and let's return c.json data and user. Whoops. There we go. Once I added the return, the error was gone. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to order this how I like it, like this. And I'm going to show you just one quirk here. Let me just indent this and this. So I think that for some reason, if you add a comma here, you will get an error, right? I don't know why, but if you add comma at the end of your controller here, you get an error like it's missing inference from session middleware. And I think I technically know why. If you add a comma, this get route probably thinks that this is a middleware, because this is supposed to be the last controller which returns something, and it's not supposed to have anything after it. So if you add a comma, the type safety of Hono probably thinks that this is still a middleware and it did not infer the types to the last controller. At least that's my theory. So I just want to give that to your attention in case you add a comma and you're wondering why does Antonio have types and I don't. Maybe it's just a comma. You can see the same thing in the logout. If I add a comma here, I think, there we go, same thing happens, right? So just remove the comma, because this is supposed to be the last function in this array of middlewares and routes and everything. All right, so we now have the current route here, and we have to now create a React query hook to fetch the current user. So let's do that inside of features auth API, and let's add use current.ts. So creating queries is even easier than creating mutations. Let's get use query from 10stack React query. Let's import our client from our RPC library, and we don't have to define the request or response type. So we just have to write one, use current, define the query to be use query. Query key here is going to be always written inside of an array, and this will just be current. And let's add a query function here to be an asynchronous method. And inside of here, let's get the response from await client API auth current, and we simply fetch the get method like this. If response is not okay, we're going to return back null. We are not going to throw an error because we will always attempt to fetch this. And if you're wondering, why do I have to explicitly check for response okay? Why can't I just wrap it in a try and catch block? That is because this is using fetch. It's not using Axios. Axios is a library which, when you wrap try and catch around it, you will receive errors in the catch method. Fetch does not work that way. So for fetch, regardless if you wrap this in try and catch, it will not throw the errors in the catch method. You have to handle errors like this. Otherwise, if we are okay, we're going to go ahead and get this from await response JSON like this. And we can simply return the data and remember to return back the query. There we go. So what I want to do now is I want to check if I can actually, load my currently logged in user. So I'm going to go inside of app, inside of page.tsx, and I'm going to clear all of my buttons and inputs here. I'm going to mark this as use client. And inside of here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get data from use current like this. And I'm going to do something here inside of my use effect. Not the prettiest solution, I know. But if I don't have data, and if we are not loading, I'm going to go ahead and redirect the user. So const router from use router here. Let's go ahead and do the following. I want to do router.push /sign in. And I'm going to call this only visible to authorized users. And we can remove this as well. Make sure you have marked this component as use client because you're using hooks here. So let's see if this works or not. Let's see what happens. I'm going to go inside of create next app here. I'm going to refresh this. And I'm going to go and open my network tab. And I'm going to go to localhost 3000. And it says only visible to authorized users. And if I click on current here, you can see the currently authorized user. That is great. You might get redirected, and I think that I might get redirected if I actually remove this cookie. So if I do this and I refresh, there we go. I'm redirected to sign in screen. So if I go back to localhost, there we go. You can see that I briefly saw the screen, which we can easily hide with, if is loading, just show the loader instead. And you can see I'm getting 401 in my network tab the moment I removed that cookie. So now what I want to do is I want to add a logout button in case I am logged in. So let's go ahead and create a mutation for that. So I'm going to go inside of my features, auth API, and I'm going to copy use login, and I'm going to rename it to use logout, like this. And I'm going to change these two to be logout, and logout is also using a post method, so we don't have to change that. I'm going to rename this mutation to use logout, and I don't have to pass any JSON at all, and I will change this to logout. There we go. I just have to execute it. That's it. And now let's go inside of our page.tsx where we call the use current. And let's add the mutate use logout here from features auth API use logout. And I'm going to go ahead and add a button here from components UI button logout. And on click, we'll simply call mutate. And it looks like it's expecting some arguments here. Use logout, mutation function, request type. I think what we can do here is just add undefined or nothing. We can just do nothing here, and we can remove the request type from here. And yeah, then you can just call mutate directly. I think you can even do mutate. No, okay, it needs to be, because this is an on-click handler, right? Let's try this now. Let's see what happens now. And what I want to do inside of the use logout is one more thing. So once I log out, I'm going to go ahead and I want to get const query client, use query client from TanStack React query here. And I'm going to call on success here. And I'm going to call query client invalidate queries. And I'm going to invalidate, I think maybe this is an object, query key, yes. current. So when I log out, I'm going to invalidate the query current, which we use in use current right here. So make sure you didn't misspell the query key right here. So once the user log out, we are going to force a refetch of the current user, and then it will be undefined, meaning this data will be deleted, and then we're going to redirect the user to sign in. Let's see if our logic is working. I'm going to go ahead now, and I will log in using antoniomail.com, Antonio 1234567 I will log in. Nothing has happened yet because we didn't create redirects from this screen, but I will manually go to localhost 3000. There we go. I'm not redirected, and it says only visible to authorized users. I'm going to open my network tab here, and I will confirm. So my application has cookies. There we go. I'm going to keep the network tab, and I will click log out. And there we go. I was redirected, and my cookie here is deleted. And you already saw the network tab. I got the logout success true, and then I refetched the current user, and I got back the error, unauthorized. And since we catch the error inside of our use current, so if we get the error, we simply set the current user to be null, which triggers a final redirect in this use effect right here. Amazing, amazing job. So what I want to do in this chapter is the following. So I'm gonna leave it at this for our login options. So I'm not gonna implement the Google and GitHub login right now. I'm gonna do that later. If for any reason you immediately want to explore this, you absolutely can. And in this documentation that we were looking at, which is basically auth, and then we choose SSR login, we go to the bottom, we choose the tutorial for Next.js. Inside of here you have step number 7, which says OAuth authentication with SSR. So it's definitely possible, and we will do it later, but if for any reason you want to explore it right now, we can go ahead and do it. Otherwise, you can go ahead and follow what I want to do next. So I want to implement a user button, and besides user button, I want to implement a different solution for redirecting my user from an unauthorized page, because I just don't like using use effects. So let's go ahead and do the user button thing first. I'm going to go ahead and log in, so antoniomail.com. And I'm going to go ahead and enter my Antonio 1234567 password. And I'm going to go back to localhost 3000, and there we go. Only visible to authorized users, meaning I am logged in. And I don't want to show a button like this. Instead, I want to create a component called user button. So let's go inside of source, let's go inside of features, inside of auth, components, and let's create a user button.tsx. Let's go ahead and mark the user button as a use client component. And inside of here, let's go ahead and let's import everything we need from the avatar component. So that's avatar, avatar fallback, and avatar image. After that, let's import everything we need from the drop-down menu component. So that's drop-down menu content, drop-down menu item, and drop-down menu trigger. While we are here in the imports, let's also import the dotted separator. And finally, let's also import our use logout and use, well, not use get user, use current like this from use current like this. So that is our API, which we've just created recently, which fetches the current user from auth endpoint. There we go. Now let's export const user button here. And inside of the user button, we're going to go ahead and do the following. We are first going to fetch the user using use current.